Hi everyone. So today I thought I'd talk about my story a little bit, change some things up. And I wanted to do this one so you get to know me a little bit better if you don't already know me, or if you do already know me but maybe you just don't know this part of me. Could be interesting. But I'm both curious to know and wanting to offer a likewise experience. I'm feeling like I have no idea if this is true, but I'm feeling like my experience may not be far off from other people's experiences. And I wanted to tell everyone my story so that I can feel less alone and so you can feel less alone. And we can talk about all these things. And I'm going to be spilling some tea. There'll be tears, there'll be laughter. No, there probably won't be any of those things. But there's some ups and downs, my friends. So let's get into it. Let's start at the wee beginning. So when I was a wee child, I used to dress up with like boas and pumps. So I'm like 2 years old. And make up songs and sing. And I would also play songs by ear on the piano. Like I was obsessed with Beauty and the Beast. For those that know me, I'm very obsessed with Beauty and the Beast. And I would play the Beauty and the Beast title song at like 3 or 4 years old on the piano. Obviously, just like the one line, not like harmony parts and stuff. But I would play the whole melody line just from my ear. So I was always a musical child. Both my parents are musicians, so I was always exposed to it. But my whole life has been about kind of rebelling against what's normal and like not wanting to be put in a box. That's going to be the theme of this story. So when I was young, I always thought that singing was like a girl thing to do. And I mean, I wasn't far off in terms of like when you look at spaces of singers, usually there's so many more girls than there are boys. Or so many more treble voices than there are tenor bass voices. And so there was something in me that was like, I want to be an instrumentalist. I feel like that's cooler. It's against the grain. So I like swore off singing completely. And my dad came home in the first day of third grade, because third grade was when you get to be in band. And he brought home almost every instrument of the band, aside from like the really large ones. Like I tried the flute, I tried the clarinet, I tried the trumpet. There were a couple more in there. All of like those windy instruments. And I really liked clarinet, so I decided I was going to play clarinet. So I played clarinet, and I was always like overachiever. It's also another pattern, perfectionist overachiever over here. So I always did really well. And then in elementary school, they'd let the really good fifth graders switch to alto saxophone. So I got to switch to alto saxophone. And then when I got to middle school, I was in band. And I even at one point switched out of a class that had all my friends in it because that class didn't have band as an option for the electives. I switched into a different class just so I could take band. Everyone was like, "You're such a nerd. What are you doing?" Especially because a lot of my friends were in that class. So I was just like, "See ya. I want to be in band. I really want to be in band." And then I was also in jazz band. I was one of the few sixth graders that would get into jazz band. So I did jazz band all 3 years in middle school. So I got to experience jazz at a really young age, and I started falling in love with it. My dad's a jazz musician, so I was kind of already in love with it at that point. But I started to listen to vocalists because I still kind of liked singing. I was like, I was doing it to make a point, like ignoring my love for singing. I was doing it to make a point. I was like, I'm not going to give in to society wanting me to be a singer. I'm going to be a saxophonist because saxophonists are cool and there are not a lot of women saxophonists. So I just was like, I'm never going to be a singer ever. And then there was a musical at school. And I auditioned in sixth grade. And I didn't get in. Wah, wah. They were doing the Christmas show. I think it was The Grinch or something. But it was the first thing I ever auditioned for as a singer. I did not get in. And for some reason, I guess I didn't care that much because I was rebelling so hard. But I decided to audition in the spring for High School Musical. Or no, I'm getting this wrong. I'm not going to edit any of this. By the way, I never edit my podcast aside from like cutting out burps and like loud gulps and coughing. Other than that, I'm just like stream of thought. I feel like it makes us feel like we're friends, right? Perfection's boring. So anyway, it wasn't High School Musical. It was, what the heck was it? I think it was a musical review. And I remember the drama teacher being like, okay, this one song, it was Adelaide's Lament from Guys and Dolls. They were like, this is a showstopper. This is a really hard song, and every girl wanted it. And I got the part, and I was so excited. And it wasn't obviously Adelaide. It was just the one song from the show because it was a review. So I was really excited about that. And then I auditioned for High School Musical, and then I was Martha Cox. I liked to pop and lock and jam and break. And then I was in Annie in 8th grade, and I was Lily St. Regis, like the hotel. And I was just, I got the bug. And then I got chosen to sing at middle school graduation. So by this time, I was like, okay, I want to keep doing music. I think I want to go to one of the performing arts high schools. I'm from New York City, so I could either go to Frank Sinatra or LaGuardia. So I auditioned for both. And I got in to both for both voice and saxophone performance. So I had to make a decision. And it was so out of pocket, not like me at all for those that knew me because I was such a diehard saxophonist. I was like, I think I want to go for singing. So I ended up going to LaGuardia High School for singing. And now, okay, this next chapter, folks, LaGuardia was like a fever dream. If anyone from LaGuardia is listening, what the heck? What was going on? That was the craziest 4 years of my life. And I went to 6 years of college. High school at LaGuardia was crazy. For those that don't know, LaGuardia High School, the full name is Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts. It is the Fame School. If anyone knows Fame, the musical and the movie, it is that school, and it is based on that school. Fun fact that I tell people that I still think is obnoxious is that all of our gym uniforms had the Fame logo on them, and it said the Fame School. And we had merch that said the Fame School. They wanted everyone to know that we were going to the school from the movie. At the time, I was like, this is cringy. But now I'm like, I get it. It's worth bragging about. So, while I was there, I was in so many choirs. I fell in love with music theory because I had to take a lot of music theory classes. Rather than most high schools that only offer AP music theory to like the seniors and juniors, you had to take like 4 semesters of music theory that was mandatory, and then you had the option of taking AP theory after that. So I had so much theory training, and I was the odd man out because I was such a nerd. I loved it. Everyone else was like, this is horrible. I don't understand it. And I was like, give me more. This is fun. And part of it is definitely due to my incredible teachers that I had there. But I don't know. I've just like always been like that because I was a huge math person as well, which plays into the story. We'll get there. But I was just always kind of good at school. This changed in college a little bit, but in like middle school and high school, I was always just kind of good at school. Everyone would always like ask me to help them and tutor them, and they would say that I would explain it to them, whatever concept, better than the teacher would. So I was like, that's interesting. So I'm going off track because what ended up happening while I was at LaGuardia was now I had to make a decision about college. And I was really good at math. I was getting high marks on math when all my friends were struggling in that same concept. And I was teaching everybody. So I was really contemplating about being a math education major, music education major, education, just math, just music. I had no idea what was going on. But anyway, let's get back to the beginning with LaGuardia. So let me paint this picture for you. I went And Mom, if you're listening, I'm going to call you out here. My mom wouldn't let me cross the street until I was like 13. I swear. And if she would tell me like 6 times to not cross when the light turned yellow, or if the walking man wasn't on the thing, as if I did not know this. Even as a middle schooler, it's very easy to know the stop hand sign and the go sign, right? But anyway, so I went from that to getting driven to the Long Island Railroad, getting on the Long Island Railroad, going all the way into Manhattan from Queens, getting off at Penn Station, getting on the subway, taking the subway all the way up to Lincoln Center, and then going to this big, huge 10-story school with elevators and escalators that would have a 10-period day. And these periods would consist of all of our normal subjects: English, math, history, gym, lunch, the list goes on, science. But then we'd have 3 to 5 music classes. So these classes would be some sort of voice class, where it would be almost like a one-on-one lesson, but with 30 other people in the class. We'd all learn the same piece. And then we'd all perform it for each other. We'd have tests. We would have tests on the German translations and the diction. And I'm doing this as a freshman in high school. So all of that's going on. I'm getting theory work, choir, and now we have the opportunity to do the shows. Now, these shows at LaGuardia were so competitive that when I auditioned for the musical my freshman year, I felt so out of my place. Oh my God. They were doing, it might have been Sweet Charity, or that might have been the next year, Guys and Dolls, something like that. Guys and Dolls, maybe. And I auditioned, and I was like, ooh, this is not cute. So I did not get in. And some of the craziest people were in this. Like, I watched Ansel Elgort play Sky Masterson in that production of Guys and Dolls that I tried to get into. I saw Timothée Chalamet play Oscar in Sweet Charity, that production I was trying to get into. I saw Madonna's daughter Lourdes playing, I forgot her name. She's from Greece. The mean one from Greece. I don't remember her name. Whatever, it'll come back to me later. But these people were like insane. And I got a little overwhelmed by that. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of liking this classical music thing. Maybe I'll take a break from musical theater and I'll really dive into that. So I started to really, dive into opera, and there was an opera workshop class, so I decided to do that. And then my senior year, we did Sweeney Todd with the opera program, so it's still a musical, just a little more classical undertones, you could say. And I got Mrs. Lovett, which was insane. I'll never forget the day that my best friend Juliana and I were waiting for the cast list to come up in her living room. Nobody was home. And we got it, and we were both cast as Mrs. Lovett. And we just ran around her house screaming at the top of our lungs. Oh, my God. That was like pure joy. Never forget those moments where you have pure joy, because they're just the best, and you have to remember them. But that was one of those moments. And then that production was insane. After going back as a high schooler, I just figured like, oh, this is how productions are once you're not in middle school. But I had costumes that were rented from the Metropolitan Opera, wigs, $3,000 wigs from the Metropolitan Opera, full lighting, full sound, full orchestra, everything. It was like a Broadway show. And these students were so incredible. So the quality was very close to that as well. Obviously, we're young kids compared to like professionals, but it was real good. You could go, if you're in New York City and you want to see a show for cheap, go see one of LaGuardia's shows, because it's like $20 instead of $60, but you get that experience. Trust me. Everything was insane. So then after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to audition for schools for music ed, because my dad was a music teacher. I was always told that I was good at teaching, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. I also had this really weird thing, and it had happened for my whole life, that I kind of never gave myself enough credit and always was down on myself. So, not to say that teaching is a second choice, and I don't think it should be for anybody. You should only do it if you love it and if you have passion for it and if you're good at it and yada yada. Teaching, all you educators are superheroes. But I did not even consider the path of pursuing performance alone, because I had this like internal battle that I just, even though I had all these experiences that would lead anyone to believe that I could do that, I did not think I could, so I didn't even attempt to. And I'm auditioning for all these schools. I think I auditioned for 9 schools, and I got into all of them, which again, I'm just so used to this high level of perfectionism that when these grand things would happen, I just kind of assumed that's what happened and didn't realize that I was like achieving something and that I should have like celebrated these things. So I got into Eastman, I got into Westminster Choir College, I got into UMD, I got into a couple other conservatories, a couple other SUNYs. I got in everywhere. And I had to decide where I was going to go. And when I went to University of Maryland, I had my audition, and the old choir director there pulled me aside after my audition. My parents and I were eating in the little cafe, and he came and sat with us, and he was like, I just want you to know you are going to get in every school you apply for, and I want to know what I can do to get you here. I was like dumbfounded by this. And then I went and shadowed the music ed department, and it was just the biggest family, so much joy. I was just obsessed with them. So out of all the schools, they were the one that made me feel the most wanted. They made me felt the most wanted. And I was very excited, and the facility was beautiful and everything. So I decided to go to University of Maryland. Next chapter. So I get to University of Maryland, and it turns out that head of the choir department, though I had only applied for music ed, he took it upon himself to accept me into the vocal performance program. They have a double degree where you actually get 2 bachelor's degrees. It's not a double major. It is 2 separate degrees. And on my acceptance letter, it said that. And I said, well, I didn't apply for that, but maybe I should do it. So I decided to take on the 2nd degree, and I pursued classical voice. But I was always interested in other genres. Another thing I forgot to mention is that I was in a vocal jazz ensemble outside of LaGuardia all through high school on Saturday mornings. Yes, I dedicated like 4 hours every Saturday morning to sing jazz instead of hang out with my friends. And it was the best experience ever with the best teacher. So, okay, sorry, fast forward. So I always like to sing all these different things. And I was in my diction class, and one of my beautiful friends, now longtime friend, Kara, was sitting next to me. I had only known her for like a week. She hands me this little flyer, and it says to come out and audition for a cappella, specifically the group Decadence. And I was like, a cappella, like Pitch Perfect? Could be cool. I like pop music. Let's do it. So, of course, knowing me, instead of singing a pop song, I sang jazz, and I scatted for my friends from Decadence, and I ended up getting in. And boy, was that a life-changing moment. I met my partner, my best friends. I learned so much about my voice. I got to be a music director. I now am an arranger, and was able to learn all about that during that time. And now I have a business in that. I have a business in private teaching. I have all these things, and I dedicate most of it to being in Decadence. So I could talk all day about how much that group changed my life and how much I love them, and how that moment where I decided to join and the moment I auditioned just completely changed the trajectory of my life. But anyway, I felt, I could talk about how much I love University of Maryland all day, but the one thing that I really struggled with, and this is the part where I want to know if other people feel this way, the part I really struggled with was having an environment that lifted up the fact that I like to sing everything instead of tearing it down. Now, all of these teachers there, they had the absolute best intentions, and they're incredible educators, incredible, knowledgeable human beings. But there is a very old school, outdated, and no longer research supporting beliefs surrounding classical music versus everything else. And I don't like it. So I really didn't have the best time I could there, because in every space I was in, I was always deemed another thing. Like, for example, I was in some operas in the ensemble at UMD, but when I was in the operas, everyone would always refer to me as the jazz singer, because I would take jazz into my lessons or into studio class or something like that, because it was something that brought me a lot of joy and I wanted to do it. And instead of it being an educational experience, it was kind of like a, oh, look what I can do, and then them all being like, oh, so you're not an opera singer. And that was kind of all that came of those things. And then similarly, in all those pop music settings I was in, I was often referred to as an opera singer. An opera singer felt like it was part of my identity, and I had to make sure that that was always in there, even though I was singing pop music. Then when I was in jazz ensembles, there was always this question of, but you're a classical singer. So no matter what, everyone was always trying to put me in a box, and it was conveniently never the box that I was trying to be in that moment, if that makes sense. So I never, ever felt like I was where I was supposed to be. And this goes pretty much through my whole life, because this happened every time. I like to sing everything, and I really believe it's possible to, and something inside of me always knew that that was true, but because it was not nurtured, I really, really didn't like that part of myself that was quote-unquote versatile. Like, people would always compliment me and say that I had a versatile voice and all this stuff, but when it came down to, like, am I a classical singer, I don't think anybody would have said yes, though I was studying classical voice. And it was a really hard decision for me, but I really wanted to say I was a classical singer. That was part of it. I wanted to say I was a classical singer, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep going with my education and study classical voice. Of course, a huge part of it was because I really liked it, but another huge part of it was to kind of prove to everyone that I was a classical singer, because I felt like I was not taken seriously. So I was like, then I'm going to major in classical voice in graduate school. I also decided to go to graduate school because I went through my music ed degree, absolutely loved my time at Maryland, got to a real teaching job, and I did not like the way it made me feel. I felt crippling anxiety to a ridiculous extent every single morning. And so many people, the thing that even made me like it less was all the educators that I would vent to about this would say, oh my God, me too. I cried every single day in my first year teaching. It gets better. And my thought, I get why they're saying that. They're trying to make me feel better and say, you know, it's going to get better. Of course it is. But is everybody blind to the fact that that's not okay, that a job makes you cry every single day your first year? I get it, first year is a hard transition. But no other job ever has made me feel that bad every day. So I decided that I was going to take a break from public education and classroom education and study classical voice at NYU. Next chapter. And this chapter is where I kind of came into my own and where I was actually nurtured for who I was as a musician. NYU, the reason I chose to go there was because they had such a nice environment for my type of performer. They made every single vocal performance major take dance class, acting class, and this was straight acting class. We did not sing in this class. It was all plays and movie scores or movie scripts and things like that. Actual acting technique. And then they would open up all their shows and ensembles to everybody. So there was a pop rock ensemble, vocal jazz ensemble, contemporary ensemble, backup vocals ensemble. There were operas, there were musicals, there were shows for contemporary singers because they had all these majors in the program. And a lot of the voice teachers within their studio would have crossover singers where they would see a musical theater student, they would see a classical student, they'd see a contemporary student. So I was like, all right, this seems like it's where I should go. And I'm very glad that I did, because this is another kind of life-altering decision where I finally came to love all of the versatility and want to bask in it and decide that I wasn't going to be put in a box. I am an opera singer. I am a jazz singer. I am a musical theater singer. I am a pop singer. I am a rock singer. I do all of these things, and now I do not care if I introduce myself that way to somebody and they look at me funny, or they suddenly don't take one of the other genres that I say I am seriously. And especially in the classical community, if I say that I do anything else besides classical singing, I know that there's something in them that says, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. And I say to that, I made a gesture. You'll have to decide what the gesture was. Anyway, while I was at NYU, I was a title role in an opera. I played Orfeo in Orfeo ed Euridice by Gluck. We learned it in like a month. I learned an entire Italian opera that was mostly recit and mostly me, almost a one-woman show. I was in a pop rock ensemble, so I was singing lead in a rock band. I was in a vocal jazz ensemble, so I was singing close harmony, learning how to do Portuguese, Brazilian technique, swing, contemporary. We even did gospel. We did everything in that ensemble. And at graduation, I got a special award for my contribution to classical voice. When I saw that in my program at graduation, my jaw couldn't have hit the floor harder, because out of all of my classmates, I was the one out there doing the most different genres. Now, not to say that I'm like, oh, I'm so much better, because that's just not true. All of my classmates were incredible. But most of my classmates were focusing on their studies, as one does. But I decided, like I always do, to spread myself a little thin and do a bunch of things. So obviously they could have all done what I did as well, but they just, wanted to breathe. Or they had other things they were doing. Everyone was amazing. So it's not really about that. But I was just shocked that it wouldn't have gone to somebody that spent all their energy on classical music. And it just kind of, it validated that fact that just because I sing pop and rock and jazz doesn't mean that I'm not a classical singer. And in fact, could mean that I am contributing more so to classical music. So once that happened, I was like, okay, my technique's getting better because my teacher understands all these genres. I'm finally having a teacher that instead of telling me it's unhealthy or certain things just shouldn't be done or it's not possible, actually how to do it. It was no longer gatekeeped and vague about using your belt or mixing or your chest voice or anything that didn't sound like a heady operatic sound. And then I even further learned that in opera, especially old opera, people were using their chest voice and using that technique. And only in contemporary technique have we completely shut that idea out. I'm going off the rails. But anyway, I was like, I gotta teach somebody else about this, because I cannot be the only one that had this experience where all through my life I was told that I wasn't a true classical singer, or that I do all these other things and that I don't belong in certain circles, or that it's just not possible to do certain techniques or certain genres with good technique. All this stuff is not true. And now I just feel like a fully well-rounded human, musician, singer, person, everything, because of my time at NYU. So now post-grad, I am a voice teacher. I am a virtual event host. I arrange. I gig. I do all of these things. I'm a puppy mom. That's how I spend most of my time. And I have such a passion and mission to create a really safe space around exploration, especially sound and genre exploration. I always tell all of my singers that come to me wanting to learn more contemporary techniques that I will never make them learn classical music if they don't want to. I also tell all of my students that I will also let them know if their voice sounds like they should sing classical music, and I'll give them the suggestion. I will always be open to everything, but I'm never going to force anyone to do anything. I do not believe that you need to learn how to sing classical music to learn how to sing, period. The idea of someone being classically trained and that somehow making them better, or somebody else that isn't classically trained less than, needs to stop. Also, the other idea that contemporary genres just like aren't as complex emotionally, or not as sophisticated. There's something about a lot of the classical music world that feels very high and mighty, very gatekeepy. They want to be elite. And I'm sorry if this offends anybody. I am in that world and I love it. I love it. I will say it again. I love it. I love opera. I love art song. I am obsessed, and I always will be. But what I'm not obsessed with is not making it accessible to others and then shooting people down that don't want to do it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It is a very old art form. Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, Dua Lipa, that's the stuff on the radio. That's what everybody likes. And of course, not everyone likes it, but that's what most people are going to be listening to. So to badmouth those humans for not being more sophisticated, but then not explaining or making said things that you want them to like accessible is like a recipe for disaster. So this safe space needs to be created. I'm not going to verbally abuse or tell anybody that they are bad or not going to go anywhere because they don't sing classical music, or that they're going to lose their voice at a young age because they're belting, or that they just can't belt, or that they just shouldn't, or maybe mixing is just not for them. These are real things I've heard my students and myself say. And not myself say, you know what I mean? Other people have said it to me, and I have heard stories of other people saying it to my students. Can you believe this? This is crazy. But yeah, this episode was kind of off the rails. I didn't have a script because I was like, it's my story. I'm just going to talk. And it was a little more solemn, I guess. I had a great musical life so far, and I'm loving it. Especially now, I think I'm at the the peak of all of that, and everything I had done up until that point really helped me get to where I am. But y'all, I know I'm not alone. It's all the young classical people. I know who you are. You feel me. I know you feel me. There are so many people that come to me and they're like, I'm a classical singer and I want to learn contemporary things, but I've been told that I can't. I've been told that I shouldn't. I've been told that there's just no good way to do it, or that my teacher doesn't know how to teach me it, so they won't, and they won't refer me to someone that will. Yada, yada, yada. I want to sing this song and I feel like it sounds bad. I feel like I can't. I want it to sound this way and I just can't get it to. Yada, yada. This happens over and over and over and over. And I was there. That was me. And only until I was in a space that was both educated and supportive did I get that. So that is my goal with Your Dynamic Voice Studio, is to be that educated and supportive environment for you. We can sing classical music all day. We can sing pop, jazz, rock, musical theater all day. I even have some students singing more metal stuff, not screaming, but on that side of things. Love it. I'll do anything with you. We'll do it together. But that's just a little about my story as a musician and singer. I feel like I left some stuff out and I bounced all around, but it's been crazy, y'all. I've had some real big lows. I've had audition seasons pretty much from when I graduated undergrad till now, where I get rejected to everything. But then I'll get leads and things. And then I'll get calls for gigs. I'll get a lot of students. And then they'll all go on vacation. And then I get a puppy. And then he gets sick. You know, these things happen. He's not sick right now. He's laying right next to me snuggling. He's so cute. But anyway, it's all a big roller coaster, and I want to be there for you to support you. So with that, I'm going to stop blabbing. That was my story, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you don't feel as alone. And if you feel me, let me know, because I don't want to feel alone either. I want to know if other people feel this way or have had similar experiences. Okay, love you, bye.